The champagne was still chilling when I found the hotel receipt in Jessica's gym bag. Not our hotel. Not our anniversary. Someone else's celebration, perfectly timed for the nights I worked late. I'm Ryan Mitchell, and I'd spent the last 3 months planning the perfect 20th anniversary surprise for my wife. 20 years of marriage, 2 kids in college, a comfortable life in suburban Phoenix. I thought we had it all figured out. The receipt was dated last Tuesday. The same Tuesday Jessica told me she was having dinner with her book club. The Ritz-Carlton downtown. Room service for 2. A bottle of Dom Perignon. Checkout at 11 the next morning, which was interesting since she'd been home by 10:30 that night, smelling like hotel soap and wearing a smile I hadn't seen in years. I stood in our bedroom, holding that small piece of thermal paper like it might explode. My hands weren't shaking yet. That would come later. Right now, I was just calculating. Running through the possibilities, trying to find an innocent explanation that my gut already knew didn't exist. The gym bag had other secrets. A second phone, one of those cheap prepaid ones you can grab at any convenience store. I powered it on with a weird sense of detachment, like I was watching myself in a movie. No passcode. Jessica never thought I'd look. The messages loaded slowly, each one a small detonation. Can't wait for Thursday. Same place? You make me feel alive again. Does he suspect anything? No, Ryan's clueless. He works until 8 most nights anyway. That last one hit different. Not just because she was cheating, but because of how easily she dismissed me. Clueless, like I was some background character in her real life. I scrolled up. The messages went back 7 months. 7 months of Thursdays, and apparently some Tuesdays too. 7 months of elaborate lies while I worked 60-hour weeks at the engineering firm, trying to make partners so we could retire early, travel like we'd always talked about. The guy's name was Blake Thornton. I didn't recognize it, but his profile picture showed a man about my age, maybe a bit younger, with the kind of tan you get from golf courses and country clubs, not construction sites. His messages had that casual arrogance of someone who'd never faced real consequences. Leave him. We could be happy. I can't, not yet. The kids, the house, it's complicated. I'm tired of being your secret. Just give me time. I need to figure out the best way. I sat down on the bed. Our bed, where we'd made love thousands of times, where we'd comforted each other through her mother's death and my father's cancer, where we'd laughed and fought and built a life together. The detachment was fading now. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel bands around my ribs and was slowly cranking them tighter. I couldn't get a full breath. 7 months. She'd been planning to leave me for 7 months. I heard the garage door open. Jessica was home from wherever she'd actually been today. Probably not yoga, despite the outfit. I had maybe 90 seconds to decide what to do. Confront her now? Pretend I didn't know? My legal mind, I'd been a contract attorney before switching to engineering, kicked into gear automatically. Evidence. I needed more evidence. Arizona was a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity could still matter for asset division, especially if she'd been spending marital funds on her affair. I took photos of everything with my own phone. The receipt, the messages, every single conversation. My hands were steady now, moving with purpose. I powered down her burner phone and put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Ryan, you home? Jessica's voice floated up the stairs, light and cheerful. The voice of someone without a care in the world. Yeah, just changing, I called back, surprised at how normal I sounded. I heard her moving around downstairs, probably starting dinner. Thursday night. She usually made something nice on Thursdays, I realize now. Guilt cooking for the affair she wasn't having that night because I happened to be home. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Same face I'd seen this morning, but everything was different now. The man looking back at me was a fool who'd trusted completely, who'd never once checked his wife's phone or questioned her stories, who'd believed in us so thoroughly that betrayal never even crossed his mind. That man was gone. I went downstairs. Jessica was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a salad, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked up and smiled, the same smile she'd given me on our first date 23 years ago. "Hey babe, you're home early." "Finished up the Peterson project ahead of schedule," I lied smoothly. I'd actually left at my normal time, but she wouldn't know that. She never tracked my schedule that closely anymore. "That's great." She came over and kissed my cheek. I didn't flinch, didn't pull away. I kissed her back, tasting the lies. "I was thinking we could watch that documentary you wanted to see tonight." "Sounds perfect." I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer, using the moment to compose my face. When I turned back, she was watching me with slight concern. "You okay? You seem tense." "Just tired. Long week." She nodded, accepting it, and went back to her vegetables. I watched her move around our kitchen, this woman I'd loved for 2 decades, and felt absolutely nothing. No, that wasn't true. I felt something. Cold, clear rage, crystallizing into purpose. The grief counselor's office smelled like lavender and old coffee. 6 chairs arranged in a circle, 5 of them occupied when I arrived. I'd been coming for 3 weeks now, ever since Dad's funeral, and I still felt like an imposter. My father had died of a heart attack at 67. Sudden, the doctor said. Massive coronary event. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. Mom found him in the garden, pruning shears still in his hand. The funeral had been a blur. Jessica held my hand throughout the service, her grip steady and warm. She'd organized the reception, coordinated with the caterers, fielded condolence calls. The perfect wife, everyone said. You're so lucky to have her, Ryan. I'd nodded and thanked them, feeling that familiar numbness I'd carried for the past 2 months. Since the afternoon I'd found the phone in her gym bag. Since I'd decided to wait, to plan, to be smart about this. Ryan, Dr. Paula Brennan, the counselor, gestured to the empty chair. We were just getting started. I sat down, nodding at the familiar faces. Margaret, who'd lost her husband to cancer. Tom, whose mother had Alzheimer's and no longer recognized him. Diane, whose teenage son had died in a car accident. And the new guy. He was maybe 35, dressed in expensive casual clothes, the kind of outfit that looked effortless but probably cost more than most people's monthly car payment. Dark hair, gym-fit build, the confident posture of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. This is Blake, Dr. Brennan said. He's joining us today. Blake, why don't you introduce yourself? My chest tightened. Blake? Common name? Probably thousands of them in Phoenix alone. Thanks. His voice was smooth, practiced. I'm Blake Thornton. My father passed away 6 weeks ago. Stroke. The steel bands around my ribs constricted. I'm sorry for your loss, Margaret said softly. The group murmured agreement. I said nothing. Couldn't. Blake Thornton was sitting 6 feet away from me, in a grief counseling circle, talking about his dead father. The same Blake Thornton who'd been sleeping with my wife for 7 months. It's been difficult, Blake continued. My father and I had a complicated relationship. He didn't approve of many of my choices. That's common, Dr. Brennan said. Grief is often more complex when the relationship was troubled. Can you tell us more about that? Blake leaned back, crossing one ankle over his knee. He was old-fashioned. Traditional values, you know? He thought I should settle down, get married, have kids, do the whole white picket fence thing. And you didn't want that? Tom asked. It's not that simple. Blake's jaw tightened. I've been in a relationship for a while now. Someone I care about deeply. But the situation is complicated. My hands gripped the armrests. The vinyl creaked under my fingers. Complicated how? Diane asked. Blake glanced at Dr. Brennan, who nodded encouragingly. She's married, he said, to someone else. The room went quiet. Margaret shifted in her seat. Tom looked down at his hands. I know how it sounds, Blake said quickly. But it's not like that. Her marriage is dead. Has been for years. Her husband is one of those workaholics who cares more about his career than his family. She's been lonely for so long. The detachment I'd felt that first afternoon in my bedroom returned. That weird sense of watching myself from outside my body. I could see myself sitting there, face neutral, breathing steady. Could see Blake Thornton, the man who'd been texting my wife about leaving me, sitting in a grief counseling circle and explaining why sleeping with someone's wife was justified. My father found out about the relationship, Blake continued, a few months before he died. He was furious. Said I was destroying a family, that I was being selfish. We had a huge fight. I told him he didn't understand, that I loved her, that we were going to be together. And then he died, Dr. Brennan said gently. 3 weeks later. Blake's voice cracked. We never reconciled. The last conversation we had, he told me I was a disappointment, that I was becoming a man he didn't recognize. That must be very painful, Margaret said. It is. Blake rubbed his face. Especially because now she's pulling away. After my father died, I needed her more than ever. But she keeps making excuses. Says she needs more time, that the situation is delicate. Meanwhile, I'm grieving alone. I wondered if my face showed anything. Wondered if anyone could see the cold rage spreading through my chest like ice water in my veins. Does she know about your father's disapproval? Dr. Brennan asked. Yes. I told her about the fight. She was sympathetic, but... Blake shook his head. Sometimes I wonder if she's ever going to leave him. She keeps talking about timing, about their kids, about the house. But their kids are in college. They barely see them, and the house is just a thing. Maybe she's afraid, Diane offered. Change is scary. Or maybe she doesn't want to leave as much as she says she does. Blake's voice turned bitter. Maybe I'm just convenient. Someone to make her feel desired while she stays in her comfortable life. The irony was almost beautiful. Here was Blake Thornton, the man who'd been pressuring my wife to abandon our marriage, sitting in a support group and complaining that she wouldn't commit to him. Have you talked to her about these feelings? Dr. Brennan asked. I've tried. But lately she's been distant. Barely responds to my messages. When we do see each other, she seems distracted. Like her mind is somewhere else. Because she knows I'm watching, I thought. Because 2 months ago, I stopped being the clueless husband who worked 60-hour weeks. 2 months ago, I came home early and found that phone, and everything changed. I hadn't confronted her. Hadn't let on that I knew anything. Instead, I'd become very attentive. Started coming home for dinner more often, suggested we spend more time together, planned date nights. Jessica had seemed pleased at first, then confused, then, gradually, nervous. The Thursday dinners had stopped. The late book clubs had become less frequent. Her phone, her real phone, was never out of her sight anymore. And Blake Thornton had noticed. What do you want to happen? Tom asked Blake. I want her to choose me. Blake's voice was raw. I want her to finally leave him and start the life we've been planning. I want to stop being a secret. And if she doesn't? Dr. Brennan asked. Blake was quiet for a long moment. Then I guess my father was right. I've wasted almost a year on someone who was never going to choose me. I've destroyed my relationship with my dad for nothing. You haven't destroyed anything, Margaret said firmly. Your father's death isn't your fault. But the fight is. The fact that he died thinking I was a failure, that's on me. The group continued, offering Blake support and perspective. I sat there, silent, watching the man who'd been sleeping with my wife unravel in front of strangers. Dr. Brennan finally turned to me. "Ryan, you've been quiet today. How are you doing?" I looked at her, then at Blake. "I'm fine," I said, "just listening." "Your father passed away recently as well, didn't he?" "5 weeks ago." "Were you close?" I thought about Dad, about the way he'd taught me to change a tire when I was 12, about Sunday dinners and terrible golf games and the pride in his voice when I made partner at the firm, before I switched to engineering. "Very close," I said. "He was a good man, honest, believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard." "Do you think he'd be proud of the man you've become?" Dr. Brennan asked. I looked directly at Blake. "I think he'd be proud of how I handled difficult situations. He taught me to be patient, to gather all the facts before making decisions, to be strategic." Blake wasn't paying attention to me. He was staring at his phone, probably hoping for a message from Jessica that wouldn't come. "That's a valuable lesson," Dr. Brennan said. "It is." I stood up. "I'm sorry, but I need to leave early today. Work emergency." It wasn't true, but I needed to get out of that room before I did something stupid, before the detachment cracked and Blake Thornton found out exactly who I was. I drove home in silence, hands steady on the wheel, mind racing. Blake Thornton's father had died 6 weeks ago. The affair had been going on for 7 months, according to those text messages, which meant Blake's father had discovered the affair and confronted his son about a month in. And Blake had chosen Jessica over his father's approval. Now his father was dead, Blake was grieving and alone, and Jessica was pulling away. I pulled into my driveway and sat there, engine running. Jessica's car was gone. Thursday afternoon. She'd mentioned something about yoga. Or maybe she was meeting Blake, trying to manage his growing desperation. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Running late? Dinner at 7? I stared at the message. Thought about Blake sitting in that circle, talking about being kept secret, about his dead father's disapproval, about wondering if Jessica would ever choose him. I typed back, "Sounds good. Love you." Her response came quickly. "Love you too." I sat there in the car, in the driveway of the house we'd bought 15 years ago, and felt absolutely nothing. The next morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. I sat in my home office with the door locked, the prepaid phone on the desk in front of me, and made a list. Not of evidence. I already had that documented in triplicate, backed up in 3 separate cloud accounts Jessica didn't know existed. This was a different kind of list. Things I knew about Blake Thornton. He was grieving his father. Genuinely, from what I could tell, the guilt in his voice when he talked about their last conversation had been real. His father had called him a disappointment, and 3 weeks later dropped dead from a stroke at 62. He wanted Jessica to leave me. Had been pressuring her for months, getting increasingly frustrated with her delays. He had no idea who I was. And he'd be back at grief counseling next Thursday. I stared at that last point for a long time. The smart move was to stop going. I'd attended for 3 weeks, enough to say I'd tried if anyone asked. My father had been dead for 7 weeks now. The raw edge of that loss had dulled to something I could carry without needing Dr. Brennan's careful questions in the circle of folding chairs. But Blake would keep going. He needed it more than I did. That guilt was eating him alive. I could see it so clearly. Me disappearing from the group, Blake continuing to show up, confessing more details about his affair with a married woman whose husband was clueless. Maybe even her name, eventually. Dr. Brennan would maintain confidentiality, of course, but I'd already gotten what I needed from him. The confirmation that Jessica's sudden distance from the affair had started exactly when I'd changed my behavior, that I'd disrupted their timeline without even meaning to. My phone buzzed. "Jessica. Hope you feel better. I can bring home soup for lunch if you want." I looked at the message for a full minute before responding. "That would be nice. Thank you." 3 dots appeared, Disappeared, appeared again. Finally. Love you. Love you too. I set the phone down and went back to my list. The thing about being a contract attorney for 8 years before switching to engineering, you learn to see leverage. Every negotiation came down to information asymmetry. Who knew what, and when they knew it. Right now, I had complete information. Jessica and Blake had no idea I knew anything. That asymmetry was valuable, but it had a shelf life. Eventually, I'd have to use it, or lose it. I opened a new document and started typing. Timeline of affair. Comprehensive analysis. The messages went back 7 months. I'd read through all of them twice now, taking notes. The affair had started at a charity gala in January, one Jessica had attended alone because I'd been in Seattle for work. Blake had bid on her in a date auction for $1,500. Dinner at the Sanctuary Resort, then drinks, then his condo in Scottsdale. She'd told him she was unhappy, that I worked too much, didn't see her anymore, that we'd become roommates who occasionally had sex. Reading that had hurt more than the explicit messages about what they did together. Because there was truth in it. I had been working 60-hour weeks. I had been focused on making partner, on the retirement timeline, on the plan we'd supposedly agreed on together. But she'd never said anything. Never asked me to slow down. Never suggested counseling or even a serious conversation. She'd just found someone else. By March, Blake was pushing her to leave. By April, she was making excuses. The kids' college tuition, the house, her parents' upcoming anniversary party. Always one more reason to wait. Then, in late June, Blake's father had found out. I couldn't tell exactly how. Blake had just texted, "Dad knows. This is bad." Jessica's response, "How bad?" "He's threatening to cut me off. Says I'm destroying a family, wants me to end it. Maybe we should." "No, screw him. I'm 35 years old. I don't need his money. I need you." But 3 weeks later, Blake's father was dead, and Blake was drowning in guilt. And 1 week after that, I'd found the receipt. I sat back, studying the timeline. The pieces were all there, but they didn't quite form a complete picture yet. Something was missing. My phone rang. Not Jessica's call, the regular one. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then thought better of it. "Hello? Mr. Mitchell? This is David Preston from Keller & Associates. I'm a partner here. I got your name from Tom Weston. Said you two worked together at Miller & Davis back in the day?" My brain took a second to shift gears. Miller & Davis, my old law firm. Tom Weston had been 2 years ahead of me, now apparently at Keller & Associates. "Tom, right. It's been a while. What can I do for you?" "Tom mentioned you'd done some contract work for us a few years back." "Excellent work," he said. "We've got a situation that needs someone with your particular background. Engineering and law, complex IP dispute, technical specifications, the whole 9 yards. Wondering if you'd be interested in consulting on it. Pays well, but it would be intense. Probably 60 hours a week for the next 2 months. 2 months ago, I would have jumped at it. Extra money, intellectually challenging, a chance to use both skill sets. Now I heard myself say, "I appreciate the offer, but my schedule's pretty full right now. Family commitments." A pause. "I understand. Well, if anything changes, give me a call. The offer stands." I hung up and looked at my list again. Things I knew about Blake Thornton. I added a new item. He needs to talk. He needs to confess. He needs someone to absolve him. And another. I can be that person. Thursday came faster than I expected. I spent the week being the perfect husband. Home by 6 every night. Took Jessica to dinner Tuesday at her favorite Italian place. Brought her coffee in bed Wednesday morning. Asked about her day, her book club, her yoga classes. She was terrified. I could see it in the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she checked her regular phone obsessively, like she was waiting for something. The prepaid phone hadn't moved from its hiding spot in her gym bag, and according to the cloud backup I was monitoring, she hadn't sent Blake a message in 9 days. He'd sent her 14. "We need to talk. You're avoiding me." "Is this about my dad? I thought you understood." "Please, just call me." "I can't do this anymore. I need to know where we stand." She hadn't responded to any of them. Thursday evening, I told Jessica I was going to grief counseling. "That's good," she said, and the relief in her voice was palpable. 2 hours where she knew exactly where I'd be, where I couldn't possibly be suspicious or watching or noticing things. "I'm glad you're still going." "Dr. Brennan says it takes time," I said. "Processing loss, learning to live with it." "Your dad would be proud of you for doing the work." I kissed her forehead. "I'll be back around 8:30. The community center was the same. Same fluorescent lights, same coffee that tasted like it had been made that morning and forgotten about. Same circle of folding chairs. Blake was already there. He looked worse than last week. His eyes were bloodshot and he'd lost weight. His polo shirt hung looser on his frame. He was talking to Dr. Brennan in the corner, his voice low and urgent. I poured myself coffee and sat down in my usual chair, 2 seats away from where Blake had sat last week. The group filled in. Margaret, whose husband had died of cancer. Stephen, who'd lost his sister in a car accident. Amy, whose mother had passed after a long battle with Alzheimer's. 3 new people I didn't recognize. Dr. Brennan called us to order. "Welcome, everyone. I see some new faces, so let's start with brief introductions. Just your first name and who you're grieving, if you're comfortable sharing." We went around the circle. When it got to Blake, he said, "Blake, my father. 6 weeks ago." His voice cracked on father. When it got to me, I said, "Ryan, my father as well. 7 weeks." Blake's eyes flicked to me, a moment of connection. 2 men who'd lost their fathers within a week of each other. Fellow travelers in grief. He had no idea. Dr. Brennan guided the conversation through the usual territory. Guilt, anger, the things we wished we'd said. The conversations we'd never have. Blake was quiet for the first 40 minutes. Then Dr. Brennan asked if anyone had experienced a setback this week, something that made the grief feel fresh again. Blake raised his hand. "I keep thinking about our last conversation," he said. "My dad and me. The things he said. The things I said back." "Do you want to share what happened?" Dr. Brennan asked gently. Blake looked around the circle, his eyes landing on me for just a second before moving on. He found out I was doing something he didn't approve of. Something that hurt other people. And he told me I was better than that. That I was throwing away everything good in my life for something that would never make me happy. How did that make you feel? Angry, defensive. I told him he didn't understand, that he didn't know what my life was like, that I deserved to be happy. Blake's hands were shaking. And then he died. And now I can't stop thinking. What if he was right? The following Tuesday, I sat in the same circle of chairs. Blake arrived early this time, looking worse than before, his shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed, dark circles under his eyes. He'd lost weight in just 5 days. "Blake," Dr. Brennan said gently, "you mentioned last week that you wanted to talk more about your father. Would you like to share today?" He nodded, hands clasped between his knees. "Yeah, I need to say it out loud." The room went quiet. Even Margaret, who usually fidgeted with her wedding ring, sat perfectly still. "My dad was a good man," Blake started. "Strict, traditional. He built his business from nothing, expected me to do the same. I disappointed him a lot over the years, but he always stood by me." His voice cracked. Until the end. I kept my expression neutral, my breathing steady. The phone in my pocket felt heavy. Last night, Blake had sent Jessica his 23rd unanswered text. I can't sleep. I can't eat. Please just tell me you're okay. 3 weeks before he died, he found out about something I'd done. Something I'm still doing. Blake looked at his hands. I'm having an affair with a married woman. Dr. Brennan's face remained professionally neutral, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. We met at the club. She was there with her book group. These women who'd come once a month, drink wine, barely talk about whatever they were supposed to be reading. A small smile crossed his face, then vanished. She was different from the others. Smart. Funny. Trapped. Trapped. I'd given Jessica everything. A beautiful home, financial security, freedom to pursue whatever interested her, book clubs, yoga, volunteer work at the art museum. Her husband works all the time, Blake continued. 60, 70 hours a week. She said she felt invisible, like she was just part of the furniture, something he'd check on between conference calls. My jaw tightened. I forced it to relax. We started meeting for coffee, then lunch, then... He rubbed his face. It's been 7 months. I fell in love with her. Real love, not just... I wanted her to leave him. Start over with me. Margaret made a soft sound of disapproval. Blake heard it, flinched. I know how it sounds. I know I'm the bad guy in this story. His voice turned desperate. But you don't understand what it's like, being with someone who actually sees you, who wants to be with you, not just the version of you that fits into their life plan. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. Blake thought Jessica saw him. She saw a distraction, an escape. A man who didn't know about the credit card debt she'd hidden, the fender bender she'd lied about, the 1,000 small deceptions that had nothing to do with me working late. I'd found all of it in the past 3 weeks. The burner phone had been just the beginning. My father found out by accident, Blake said. He came by my place unannounced, saw her car in the garage. She'd parked inside because her husband knew her vehicle, and she was paranoid about being seen. He laughed bitterly. Dad waited. When she left, he followed her, got her license plate. He had resources, found out everything within 24 hours. My hands rested calmly on my knees. Inside, my mind raced. Blake's father had known Jessica's identity, had known everything. He called me that night, told me to end it immediately, said I was destroying a family, that I was better than this. Blake's voice dropped to a whisper. I told him I loved her, that I was going to marry her. He said I disgusted him. Dr. Brennan leaned forward slightly. That must have been incredibly painful. We didn't speak for 3 weeks. I kept calling, but he wouldn't answer. Then his housekeeper found him. Blake's shoulders shook. Heart attack, alone in his study. The autopsy said it was massive, that he probably died within minutes. But all I can think about is those 3 weeks. He died believing I was a piece of garbage who ruins lives for fun. You can't know that the stress from your argument caused his death, Dr. Brennan said. Can I? Blake's laugh was harsh. He was fine before, healthy, played golf 3 times a week. Then I tell him I'm destroying some other man's 20-year marriage, and 3 weeks later, he's dead. 20 years. Jessica and I had been married exactly 20 years last November. The anniversary I'd spent discovering her affair. The worst part is, I can't even end it now. I tried. I told her we needed to stop, that my father's death was a sign, that we were hurting too many people. He looked up, eyes red. She agreed. Said she needed to focus on her family anyway, that her husband had been acting strange and she was worried he suspected something. I'd been acting strange, coming home at 6 instead of 8, asking about her day, touching her shoulder when I walked past, being the husband she'd claimed to want. It had terrified her. So it's over? Margaret asked, her tone still disapproving but slightly softer. I don't know. Blake pulled out his phone, stared at it. She won't respond to my messages, won't answer my calls. I know I should let it go, move on, but I can't stop thinking that if I could just talk to her, explain about my dad, she'd understand. She'd... He trailed off. She'd what? Leave me? Run to Blake and his grief and his guilt? Jessica hadn't responded to Blake's messages because she was too busy watching me, wondering what I knew, terrified that her careful compartmentalization was collapsing. Have you considered that she might need space? Dr. Brennan asked carefully. That she might be processing her own grief and guilt? Every day, every hour. Blake put his phone away. But I also know her husband. Not personally, but I know the type. Engineer, works constantly, probably thinks marriage is like a machine. Put in the right inputs, get the right outputs. He has no idea who she really is. The anger that flared in my chest was cold and controlled. I let it settle, dissipate. Blake knew nothing. He knew the version of Jessica she'd performed for him, the role she'd played. Trapped wife. Neglected woman. Victim of an emotionally absent husband. He didn't know she'd stopped working because she wanted to, not because I demanded it. Didn't know we'd made that decision together after our youngest was born, that I'd supported her when she'd felt guilty about it. He didn't know about the Thursday dinners she'd insisted on after the affair started, her guilt manifesting as overcompensation. Didn't know she'd been the one to pull away from me first, years before Blake, creating distance she could later justify as my fault. What do you want from this situation? Dr. Brennan asked. If you could have any outcome, what would it be? Blake was quiet for a long moment. I want my father back. I want to tell him I ended it, that he was right, that I'm sorry. His voice broke. But I can't have that. So I guess I want absolution. I want to know that I'm not the monster he thought I was. That I can still be a good person despite this. Absolution from whom? Dr. Brennan pressed. I don't know. Her, maybe. Or her husband. If he knew the whole story, if he understood that she was unhappy, that I wasn't just some predator who... He stopped. That's crazy, right? I can't ask her husband to forgive me. It's not about what's realistic, Dr. Brennan said. It's about understanding what you're really seeking. I sat perfectly still, letting Blake's words wash over me. He wanted absolution. He wanted to confess to me, to explain, to make me understand that he'd loved my wife, that it wasn't just about sex or ego or conquest. He wanted me to forgive him. The idea was so absurd it almost made me smile. After the session, Blake caught up with me in the parking lot. Ryan, right? I turned, kept my expression mildly friendly. Yeah, Blake. Thanks for not judging me in there. I saw some of the looks I was getting. He shoved his hands in his pockets. I know I sound like a terrible person. Everyone's dealing with their own stuff, I said neutrally. Grief makes us human. He nodded, seeming to take comfort in that. Your dad, you said he died suddenly too? Heart attack, at his desk. The lie came easily. My father had died in his sleep, peacefully, but Blake didn't need to know that. It's the worst, isn't it? Not getting to say goodbye. Blake's eyes were wet. Not getting to make things right. Yeah, I agreed. The worst. The thing about grief counseling is that people tell the truth there. Not the polished version they give friends, not the sanitized story they post on social media. The raw, ugly truth. Blake showed up to every session. So did I. I keep calling her, he said, during our 4th session together. It goes straight to voicemail. She won't answer my texts. Dr. Brennan nodded. How does that make you feel? Like I'm being punished. He rubbed his face. My dad dies, and now she's just gone. Like she got what she wanted and disappeared. I sat 3 chairs away, maintaining the same neutral expression I'd perfected over the past month. The burner phone was still active in my garage safe. Jessica didn't know I'd found it. She thought she'd lost it somewhere, had been quietly frantic for weeks. "Have you considered that she might be dealing with her own guilt?" Dr. Brennan asked. "She should feel guilty." Blake's voice cracked. "We both should. My father knew. He looked at me like I was a stranger before he stopped. I keep thinking if I could just talk to her, if she'd just answer one call, maybe I could." "Could what?" Dr. Brennan prompted. "Make it mean something. Make his death mean something." Blake looked up, and his eyes were red. 7 months. You don't just throw away 7 months. Actually, you could. I'd done it with 20 years in the space of 90 seconds, standing in my garage with a hotel receipt in my hand. "Tell me about the last time you spoke with her," Dr. Brennan said. Blake exhaled slowly. 3 weeks before my dad died. We were supposed to meet at the hotel, but she canceled. Said her husband was acting different, coming home early, being attentive. He said the word like it was poison. She thought maybe he suspected something. I remembered that day. I'd brought home Thai food from the place Jessica liked, the one 40 minutes across town. She'd stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "And you haven't heard from her since?" One text, the day after my dad's funeral. She said she was sorry for my loss and that we needed to take a break. A break. Blake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My father died knowing what I'd done, and she's taking a break." "You're angry with her," Dr. Brennan observed. "I'm angry with myself." Blake leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I keep thinking about what my dad said, that last conversation. He told me I was destroying a family, that her husband worked 60-hour weeks to give her a good life, and this was how we repaid him." My jaw tightened. I kept my breathing steady. "He said he'd met the husband once at some charity thing, said he seemed like a decent guy, smart, trusting." Blake's voice dropped. "Dad asked me how I'd feel if someone did this to me. If I ever got married and some guy decided my wife was fair game because I was working too hard." The woman next to me, Patricia, reached over and squeezed Blake's hand. "Your father loved you. That's why it hurt him so much. He said he was going to tell the husband. Give me 1 week to end it myself or he'd do it for me." Blake wiped his eyes. "I begged him not to, told him I'd break it off. And then he just... his heart..." Dr. Brennan let the silence sit for a moment. "Do you think the stress contributed to his heart attack?" "I know it did. The doctor said he had underlying issues, that it could have happened any time, but..." Blake shook his head. "It happened 3 hours after our conversation. 3 hours after I watched my father realize his son was a piece of garbage." I thought about my own father. The heart attack that took him while he was reading the newspaper at his kitchen table. Clean. Quick. He never knew about Jessica's affair. Never had to look at me with disappointment. Small mercies. "I want to tell him," Blake said suddenly. "The husband. I want to confess everything." My pulse kicked up, but I kept my face neutral. "Why?" Dr. Brennan asked. "Because someone should know the truth. Because he deserves to know what his wife really is." Blake's hands clenched. "And because maybe if I do the right thing now, it'll count for something. Maybe my dad will... I don't know. Maybe it'll matter." "Absolution," Dr. Brennan said quietly. "Yeah, absolution." Blake looked around the circle. "Is that crazy? Wanting to blow up some guy's life just so I can feel better about myself?" "It's honest," Patricia said. "More honest than keeping the secret." The man across from me, Gerald, shook his head. "You'd be destroying him. Trust me. Some things you can't come back from." "He's already destroyed," Blake said. "He just doesn't know it yet." I almost laughed. Almost. "What do you think, Ryan?" Dr. Brennan turned to me. You've been quiet today. Everyone looked at me. Blake looked at me. I took my time answering. I think the truth has a way of coming out eventually, whether Blake tells him or not. But should I? Blake pressed. Should I tell him? I met his eyes, held them. What do you think he'd do if he found out? I don't know. Divorce her, probably. Maybe come after me. Blake swallowed. My dad said he was a lawyer originally, worked in contracts before switching to engineering. Said he was the kind of guy who read every word of the fine print. Sounds careful, I said. Sounds smart, Blake corrected. Too smart to stay married to someone like her once he knew. Then maybe you should tell him. I kept my voice level. Give him the information and let him decide what to do with it. Blake studied me. You really think so? I think people deserve to make informed decisions about their own lives. I paused. I think operating without all the facts is a good way to end up somewhere you never intended to be. Dr. Brennan made a note. That's an interesting perspective, Ryan. Very analytical. I'm an engineer, I said. Analysis is what I do. The session ended 20 minutes later. I was packing up my things when Blake approached me in the parking lot. Again. This was becoming a pattern. Hey, he said. Thanks for what you said in there. Just my opinion. No, it helped, really. He hesitated. I've been thinking about your dad. How sudden it was. At least you don't have any regrets, right? No unfinished business? I thought about the spreadsheet on my laptop. The one tracking Jessica's spending patterns, her schedule, the gaps in her day that lined up perfectly with Blake's calendar. The one I updated every night after she fell asleep. No regrets, I said. That must be nice. Blake looked out across the parking lot. I keep thinking about all the things I should have said to my dad. Should have done differently. Like not sleeping with someone else's wife? The words came out before I could stop them. Blake flinched. Yeah, he said quietly. Like that? I softened my tone. Sorry, that was harsh. No, you're right, it's the truth. He kicked at a loose piece of asphalt. Can I ask you something? Sure. If someone did that to you, if your wife cheated, what would you do? I pretended to consider it. Honestly? I don't know. I'd like to think I'd be rational about it. Gather information. Make sure I understood the full situation before making any decisions. Not just confront her right away? And say what? Give her time to come up with a story? Let her control the narrative? I shook my head. No. I'd want to know everything first. Who, what, when, where, how long, all of it. Blake nodded slowly. That's smart. Cold, but smart. Betrayal deserves a cold response, I said. Heat makes you sloppy. Is that the lawyer in you talking or the engineer? Both. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I wish I'd been that smart. I wish I'd thought things through instead of just feeling. Feelings are overrated, I said. I meant it. I hadn't felt much of anything since the day I found that receipt. Just a vast, cold clarity that grew sharper with each passing week. Blake's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his face fell. My mom. She wants me to go through more of Dad's things. That's rough. Yeah. He pocketed the phone. Hey, some of us are getting coffee after next session. You should come. Maybe. Think about it. Might be good to talk outside the group setting. I watched him walk to his car, a BMW 7 Series, midnight blue. The kind of car you bought when you wanted people to know you'd made it. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. I typed back, no problem, love you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, love you too. I sat in my car for a long time after Blake drove away, staring at those 3 words on my screen. The thing about lies is they require maintenance, constant upkeep. One slip, one forgotten detail, and the whole structure collapses. Jessica was getting sloppy, Blake was falling apart, and I was there, watching both of them, gathering every piece as it fell. Dr. Brennan was right about one thing. The truth did have a way of coming out. She just didn't know I was the one who'd decide when, where, and how. The following Tuesday, Blake texted me at 6:47 p.m. "Hey man, you free to grab coffee after group tomorrow? Could really use someone to talk to." I stared at the message on my phone, my real phone, not the burner I'd bought to monitor Jessica's texts. The burner sat in my home office safe now, along with printed transcripts of every message between her and Blake, bank statements showing the credit card she'd opened without telling me, and a spreadsheet tracking every Thursday book club that had actually been a hotel room. "Sure. Know a place near Dr. Brennan's office? There's a Starbucks 2 blocks west. See you there." Jessica was upstairs in our bedroom, probably staring at her own phone, waiting for Blake to text her. He hadn't in 4 days. I'd watched his messages to her shift from desperate to angry, to something that looked like resignation. I went upstairs. She was sitting on the bed, laptop open, but her eyes were on her phone. "I'm going to grab coffee with someone after group tomorrow," I said. She looked up, and I saw it again. That flash of fear she couldn't quite hide anymore. "Who?" "Guy from therapy, Blake. His dad died around the same time as mine." Her face went white. Actually, white, like someone had drained the blood from it. "You okay?" I asked. "Fine, just..." She set her phone down too carefully. "That's good, that you're making friends there. He's going through a rough time, relationship stuff on top of the grief." "Oh?" "Yeah, involved with someone he can't be with. It's complicated." I kept my voice neutral, like I was discussing the weather. "Anyway, I'll probably be home late. Don't wait up." I left her sitting there, and I knew, absolutely knew, that the second I was out of the room she'd be texting Blake, warning him, panicking. Except Blake wasn't responding to her anymore. Wednesday's session was smaller than usual. Dr. Brennan started with her standard opening, asking if anyone had something they wanted to share. A woman named Patricia talked about cleaning out her mother's apartment and finding love letters from a man who wasn't her father. Blake sat across from me, looking worse than last week. His eyes were red-rimmed, his expensive shirt wrinkled. When Patricia finished, Blake raised his hand. "I think I need to tell him," he said. Dr. Brennan waited. "The husband. The woman I was seeing. I told you guys about her last week. Her husband." Blake's hands were shaking. "My father wanted me to come clean, to be a man about it. And I didn't. And now he's gone, and I can't carry this anymore." "What do you think telling him would accomplish?" Dr. Brennan asked. "Honestly, I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe it would just make everything worse." He looked at me directly. "Ryan, you're married, right?" My heart rate didn't change. I'd learned that trick in contract negotiations years ago. Control the physiological response, control the situation. 20 years, I said. "If your wife cheated on you, would you want to know?" The room was silent. Patricia shifted in her chair. Dr. Brennan's expression remained neutral, but I saw her glance at me. "I'd want to know the truth," I said. "Whatever it was?" Blake nodded slowly. "Even if it destroyed everything?" "The destruction already happened. I just want to know what I was standing in the ruins of." He seemed to consider this. "The thing is, I think he might already suspect. She's been different lately, distant, scared. She won't return my calls, won't answer my texts. Radio silence for almost 2 weeks now. 12 days, I thought. Since I started coming home at 5:30 instead of 8. Since I started asking about her day, kissing her goodbye in the morning, being present in a way I hadn't been in years. Maybe she ended it, Patricia offered. Maybe she chose her marriage. That's what I'm afraid of, Blake's voice cracked. That she'll just go back to her life like nothing happened, like I was nothing, and her husband will never know how close he came to losing her. Or maybe, I said quietly, he already lost her 7 months ago, and he just doesn't know it yet. Blake looked at me with something like gratitude, like I understood him. Exactly, he said. Exactly. That's why I need to tell him, because he deserves to make an informed choice about his own life. Right now, he's living in a lie, and she's the one controlling the narrative. Dr. Brennan leaned forward. Blake, I want you to think carefully about your motivations here. Are you doing this for him or for yourself? Is this about giving him information, or is it about alleviating your own guilt? Does it matter? Blake shot back. Does it matter why I do it, if it's the right thing? It might matter to him, she said, and it might matter to you afterward, when you're living with the consequences. Blake slumped in his chair. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to fix any of this. You can't fix it, I said. Everyone looked at me. You can't unring the bell. You can't undo what happened. All you can do is decide who you want to be from this point forward. Who do you think I should be? Blake asked. I met his eyes. I think you should be someone who tells the truth, whatever the cost. The Starbucks was crowded, full of ASU students with laptops and headphones. Blake bought us both coffee. He insisted on paying, and we found a table in the back corner. Thanks for this, he said. I know we barely know each other, but everyone else in my life is so tangled up in this mess. You're like neutral territory. I sipped my coffee. Happy to listen. Can I ask you something about your marriage? Sure. How do you keep it alive? 20 years, you said. That's longer than I've known most people in my life. How do you not get bored? How do you not start looking for something else? I thought about Jessica upstairs in our bedroom, staring at her phone. I thought about the spreadsheet in my safe, the hotel receipts, the text messages where she called me clueless. I think you have to decide that the person you married is still the person you want, I said. Every day, you make that choice. And if you stop making it, if you start looking elsewhere, then you've already left the marriage. The physical affair is just making it official. Blake nodded slowly. She told me he was never home, that he worked all the time, that he didn't see her anymore, that she was lonely. And you believed her? Why wouldn't I? Because people tell themselves stories to justify what they want to do. Maybe he was working all the time. Or maybe she needed him to be the villain so she could be the victim. Blake's jaw tightened. You think she lied to me? I think she probably lied to both of you. Different lies for different audiences. He sat back, processing this. My father said something similar. He said she was using me, that I was just an escape fantasy, and when reality hit, she'd go running back to her safe, boring life. Do you think he was right? I don't know. I thought what we had was real. I thought... He stopped, shook his head. God, I sound pathetic. You sound like someone who got in over his head. I loved her, Blake said quietly. I still do. That's the worst part. Even knowing she's ghosting me, even knowing she probably chose him, I still... His phone buzzed. He grabbed it immediately, desperately, then his face fell. Not her? I asked. Just my sister, checking in. He set the phone down. She hasn't texted me in 12 days. 12 days. After 7 months of daily contact, multiple times a day. And now, nothing. Maybe her husband found out. Blake's eyes widened. You think? You said she seemed scared, distant. That's consistent with someone who got caught. But she would have told me. She would have... He stopped. Unless she couldn't. Unless he's watching her. I let the silence stretch. I need to know, Blake said finally. I need to know if he knows. I need to talk to him. Do you know where he works? No, she never told me. She was paranoid about me showing up, about anyone seeing us together. He laughed bitterly. I don't even know his name. 7 months, and I don't know her husband's name. How screwed up is that? Pretty screwed up, I agreed. She called him Ryan once. That's all I've got. Ryan, who works too much and doesn't appreciate her. I finished my coffee. You want my advice? Please. Let it go. If she wanted to be with you, she'd be with you. She made her choice. Respect it and move on. Blake's hands clenched around his cup. I can't. I can't just walk away like it meant nothing. Then you're not doing this for her. You're doing it for you. He met my eyes, and for a moment, I thought he might see it, might recognize something in my face, my voice, the careful way I was steering this conversation. But he just nodded. Maybe you're right. Maybe I am. I let Blake sit with that realization for a few seconds before standing. I should get going. Jessica will wonder where I am. Jessica? Blake's voice was strange. Your wife's name is Jessica? I looked at him. Really looked at him. Watched the color drain from his face as the pieces started clicking together. Yeah, I said quietly. Jessica Mitchell. His coffee cup hit the table. No, that's not. 7 months, I said. The Ritz-Carlton. Thursday nights when I worked late, except I stopped working late about 12 weeks ago. Right around when she stopped answering your texts. Blake stood up so fast his chair fell backward. How did you? I'm a lawyer and an engineer, Blake. I read the fine print. I found the burner phone in her gym bag 2 months ago. I've read every message you ever sent her. I kept my voice level, conversational. I've been sitting in grief counseling listening to you confess for 6 weeks now. His face went from white to red. You son of a… My father didn't die of a heart attack at his desk, I continued. He died peacefully in his sleep. But you needed someone to relate to, didn't you? Someone who understood sudden loss. Someone who'd give you permission to confess. This is insane. Blake backed away from the table. You're insane. I'm practical. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd prepared. I have documentation of everything. Every hotel visit, every text message, the credit card she opened to pay for the lingerie she wore for you. I even have the transcripts of these therapy sessions. I've been recording them on my phone. Blake's hands were shaking. What do you want? Want? I considered the question. I wanted to understand. I wanted to know if you actually loved her, or if this was just ego, if she loved you, or if you were just convenient. And? You loved the idea of her, the fantasy she sold you, trapped wife, neglectful husband, star-crossed lovers. She loved the attention, the escape. Neither of you loved each other enough to actually blow up your lives for it. Blake's jaw worked. I would have. I wanted her to leave you. But she didn't. And when I started paying attention again, when I started being the husband she claimed to want, she got scared and ran. Not to you, away from both of us. I pocketed my phone. My lawyer filed the divorce papers this morning. Jessica doesn't know yet. She'll be served tomorrow. You're divorcing her? Did you think I'd stay? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You wanted absolution, Blake. You wanted someone to forgive you, to tell you that you're not the monster your father thought you were. But I'm not that person. I never meant… My father didn't… Your father was right about you. You are a disappointment. But you know what? So is she. You deserve each other. I walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. The recordings of you confessing to the affair in therapy? Those are inadmissible in court. patient confidentiality. But the texts, the hotel receipts, the credit card statements, all admissible. Arizona's a no-fault state, but judges still consider infidelity when dividing assets. Jessica's going to walk away with a lot less than she expected. "You used me," Blake said, his voice hollow. "You sat there week after week and let me confess. And you used every word." "I did. Just like you used my marriage as your personal escape fantasy. Just like Jessica used both of us. Me for security, you for excitement." I met his eyes one last time. The difference is, I was honest about what I was doing. I never pretended to be your friend. I left him standing there in the Starbucks, surrounded by students who had no idea they'd just witnessed a man's world collapse. Jessica was waiting when I got home. She was pacing in the living room, her phone clutched in her hand. "Blake texted me," she said immediately. He said you know, that you've known for months, that you've been—" She stopped, staring at me. "Tell me it's not true." I set my keys on the counter. "It's true." The phone slipped from her hand, clattered on the hardwood floor. "I found the burner phone in October," I said calmly. "Read every message. Tracked every hotel visit. I've spent the last 12 weeks documenting everything while you tried to figure out if I suspected anything." "Ryan, I can explain." "Don't." The word came out harder than I intended. "Don't insult me by trying to explain. I know exactly what happened. You were bored, lonely. You met someone who made you feel special. You started an affair. You kept it going for 7 months. You were planning to leave me but couldn't quite pull the trigger. Then I started coming home early, and you got scared." Tears were running down her face. "I made a mistake. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted." "You knew exactly what you wanted. You wanted both. The security of our marriage and the excitement of Blake. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too." I walked past her toward the stairs. "I filed for divorce this morning. You'll be served tomorrow." "No." She grabbed my arm. "No, please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then at her face. 20 years. 2 kids. A life built together, brick by brick, now reduced to rubble. "I don't want to fix it," I said quietly. "I don't want to be married to someone who thinks I'm clueless, who lies to my face every single day, who opens secret credit cards and rents hotel rooms and builds an entire second life behind my back." "I love you," she sobbed. "I know I screwed up, but I love you. I choose you. You chose me when you ran out of other options. That's not the same thing." I pulled my arm free. "I'm staying at a hotel tonight. My lawyer will be in touch about the asset division. The house will need to be sold." "The house? Ryan, this is our home. Our kids grew up here. Our kids are in college. They'll survive." I started up the stairs, then paused. "For what it's worth, Blake's a mess. His father died thinking he was a disappointment, and he can't handle the guilt. If you're thinking about running to him now that we're done, don't. He doesn't want you anymore. He just wanted absolution." "I don't want Blake," she whispered. "I want you. You should have thought of that 7 months ago." I packed a bag while she sat on the bed and cried. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no grief. Just a vast, cold emptiness where 20 years of marriage used to be. The divorce took 6 months. Jessica fought it at first, tried to claim reconciliation was possible, but her lawyer eventually convinced her to settle. The affair evidence was too damaging, the paper trail too clear. She got the car and half the savings. I got the house, the retirement accounts, and primary ownership of the vacation property in Sedona we'd bought 5 years ago. The kids took it hard. Emily, our oldest, stopped speaking to me for 2 months. She thought I was being cruel, unforgiving. Jake, our youngest, just went quiet. But eventually they came around. especially after Jessica tried to move Blake into her new apartment 3 months after the divorce was final. That relationship lasted 6 weeks. Turned out Blake wasn't interested in being her boyfriend when it wasn't forbidden anymore. The guilt over his father had eaten away at whatever feelings he'd had, and without the thrill of sneaking around, there was nothing left. Jessica called me once, about a year after the divorce was finalized. She was crying, saying she'd made the biggest mistake of her life, that she'd thrown away everything that mattered for something that was never real. I listened politely, then told her I hoped she found what she was looking for, and hung up. I never went back to grief counseling. Dr. Brennan called once to check on me, and I told her I was doing better. It wasn't entirely true, but it wasn't entirely false either. I'd processed my father's death in my own way, on my own time. The therapy had served its purpose, just not the one she'd intended. Blake stopped going too, according to Patricia, who I ran into at a coffee shop 8 months later. She said he'd fallen apart after his confession to me, stopped showing up, stopped answering Dr. Brennan's calls. She heard through someone else in the group that he'd moved to California. A fresh start, away from the memories. I sold the house eventually. Too many ghosts. Bought a condo downtown with a view of Camelback Mountain. Dated a few women, nothing serious. Focused on work, on my kids, on rebuilding a life that was mine alone. People asked if I regretted it. If I wished I'd tried to save the marriage, gone to counseling, forgiven her. The answer was always no. Because here's what I learned. Sitting in that circle of folding chairs, listening to Blake Thornton confess his sins. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Not because the betrayed person is unforgiving, but because forgiveness would require becoming someone else. Someone who accepts being called clueless. Someone who lives with the knowledge that their partner chose deception over honesty every single day for 7 months. I wasn't that person. I never would be. My father taught me to read the fine print, to gather all the facts before making decisions, to be strategic. He taught me that trust without verification is just willful blindness, and he taught me that sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. I think he would have been proud of how I handled it. Cold, maybe. Calculated, definitely. But honest. I never lied to Jessica about what I was doing. I never pretended to forgive her while planning my revenge. I just gathered the facts, made my decision, and executed it. Blake wanted absolution for destroying a marriage. What he got instead was a mirror, held up by the man whose life he'd tried to steal. And in that reflection, he saw exactly what his father had seen. A man who took the easy path, who justified selfish choices with pretty words, who wanted forgiveness without earning it. Jessica wanted security and excitement, stability and passion, a husband and a lover. What she got instead was the consequences of trying to have both. She lost the marriage, lost Blake, lost the respect of her children, and gained nothing but the knowledge that her choices had destroyed everything she claimed to value. As for me, I got my life back. Not the life I'd planned, not the 20th anniversary celebration I'd spent months preparing, but a life built on truth instead of comfortable lies. A life where I knew exactly where I stood, with everyone. And in the end, that was worth more than all the hotel receipts and text messages and secret phone calls combined. The truth doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just shows you the cage you've been living in. But at least then you can decide whether to stay or walk away. I walked away, and I never looked back.